Hey guys, I recently had a one-on-one mentor session with one of my students, Scott, an established videographer from Edinburgh. He'd been asking me for advice prior to going into an important meeting with a big client, and being one of my video business mastery students, he was eager to implement the strategies I teach. After his meeting, we followed up with a Zoom call to see what went well, what didn't, and what could have been improved. This mentoring session in particular raised interesting questions that come up a lot. The call was an hour long, so I've broken it down into condensed sections of frequently asked questions. One of the core principles that separates a struggling videographer and a successful business owner is the ability to differentiate based on value and results, rather than the visuals and creative. So we kicked off this call on the topic of always discussing results before the creative treatment. I'll give you a couple of examples of the meetings that I've had over the last couple of years, but they've really not required any more than a 1 hour conversation to sell them on at least £20,000 and up of video work. And it's not required any discussion over the creative treatment, and it's not required any examples. It's purely talking about the results from a business perspective, and going down the route of talking about creative treatment and what cameras you're going to use, or
never comes up.
All of that. If it comes up before, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. And I think this is something that I'm still guilty of occasionally, because it took me a long time to realize just how detrimental that can be when you're trying to position yourself as a business owner and expert partner, as opposed to putting yourself in a box of being a videographer who just shoots creates something based on kind of quality and aesthetics. So kind of as soon as you start finding yourself edging towards that box of the videographer box, you just got to kind of check yourself and be like, hang on, should I be doing this? And what you were talking about there, giving them video examples, and
it's too much. Yeah. It's unnecessary as well.
It's unnecessary, and it's going down that route. Because as soon as you start doing that, they'll also start thinking, well, can I get that cheaper? I've seen what this guy is now offering.
Right. Yeah, of course.
They'll then think, okay, I can go take this to 5 other videographers and see if I can get the same thing cheaper. Can you recall doing this in your own initial meetings? Now, this leads me nicely onto the next topic that Scott picks up on. Price anchoring is a technique that I learned through pricing expert Blair Enns, and I feel it's an often overlooked but powerful tool in any sales meeting. Typically, with my past clients, I recommend spending anywhere between 30% and 10% of the target as a sort of insurance policy to make sure that we're spending a proportional amount to get the kind of solution that you're after.
Is there a reason why you said 30% to 10% as opposed to 10 to 30?
Yeah, it's something that I've been getting in the habit of recently, and it's to do with price anchoring. And I will say, something like typically our clients pay anywhere from £40,000 to £20,000 per video. And it's just because psychologically the first number is always the price anchor. If I say typically our clients pay anywhere from £10,000, £40,000, in the mind it's like, well, £10,000 is kind of the price anchor, and I always want the first number to be the biggest number possible, just to kind of to set the frame. It's a psychological, I wouldn't call it a trick. I'd just say it's just really that the first number you hear is the one that, because a lot of meetings, in my experience, the client is literally just waiting for the number. They're there, they got this, they're all this like pretense moving up to the point. They want to know how much it's going to cost. And then when you drop a number like 40,000, then they're like, oh, that's expensive, to 20,000. They're like, oh, that's actually quite reasonable comparatively. Our brains can only establish the value of something relative to another number. So if I told you that the video is going to cost £30,000, you've got nothing to compare it to, or the client doesn't have anything to compare to. That's why they go price shopping. That's why a client goes and talks to 3 or 4 different companies so that they can get a high, a middle, and a low, and they'll almost always go for the middle option. So the purpose of giving them multiple options yourself is that you stop the client from going price shopping, or you greatly reduce the chances that they go talking to other videographers. So if you just give the client a single number to work with, they don't know if it's expensive or if it's cheap, and they'll go looking elsewhere. In theory, people should only pick the highest tier option about 5%, 10% of the time. So if people are picking your highest tier option, it means
it's too low.
It's too low. And the highest tier should usually be at least double what you want to charge, so that it encourages people into the middle.
Okay, so I see.
The highest tier isn't really there to be picked. It's just to give people a frame of reference,
right?
So that they can establish that the middle option is the best value. Price anchoring is going to help you practice your business skills and build confidence when communicating your value. Most business owners have a jaded relationship with money, where they're stuck in a scarcity mindset, which prevents them from communicating their value to their clients. So let's address talking about price and psychological barriers.
Every form of communication is manipulation, that's fine, but there's good and bad manipulations. And what I feel like is there comes a point where it becomes negative manipulation, and I can't sort of get my head around that. So that's where I struggle.
Sure, okay. Well, what was the event? What was it that this video or set of videos is promoting?
Anyway, it's an ice skating brand, and it's basically just they're promoting a new release of clothing, and they just wanted a video to showcase their new stock.
Well, I mean, quite simply, in terms of like practically how you go about that, it's just a case of finding out how much on average their new clothing sells for. You know, how many items are each customer usually buying? Yeah. They're just say buying one shirt or one item of clothing. You know, what's the average value of each sale? And then from that, you can bridge into asking, well, how many would you expect to sell if this project is a success? And I don't know how you feel about that, but it's not particularly intrusive.
It doesn't seem it. No, when you say it like that, it just seems so fine. Like, it really does. And yet I feel like when I leave this conversation, I'll be like, sure, yeah, I can do that. And then I'll think it through. And all of a sudden I'll be like, hang on a minute. No, I can't do it again. But the way you said it there, I'm glad you're recording it. And I hope that is, in some point I can connect to that again, because it was so relaxed. There was no intrusion. And actually she gave me those numbers. Like, she actually told me. Yeah. Without provocation, she was like, look, this is a high quality brand. We're selling it for £100 a piece. Mm-hmm. And people are paying for it extensively. So yeah, I think really I missed a shot there.
Getting that data can kind of expand the conversation down the right track, and you don't have to then throw hard numbers at them, which I think is something that people kind of worry about. The anxiety builds when you start thinking about, you know, am I going to throw like a massive number at them? It's not always necessary. And, you know, if you find out that they're selling 100 a piece, and they say, look, we'd like to sell, you know, 1,000 before Christmas with the video content that you're creating, which sounds very reasonable, then you can say, okay, so you're looking to raise £100,000 before Christmas if this project is a success. And then with that, you can just, depending, like for the first couple of meetings, you might want to just take it easy and just be like, okay, so what do you think is a reasonable amount to spend on this project to help you reach that 100,000 target?
I like that. I really like that.
Nice soft way to approach it. And then in later meetings, you might want to approach it with, so if you stand to gain £100,000, if this project is a success, what do you think is a reasonable percentage of that to spend to ensure everything goes well and you reach your targets?
But it's those barriers, and they're purely psychological, which if I experience, inevitably the client's going to experience that as well. So how do you approach those psychological boundaries?
I mean, first off, I guarantee you that in a few years' time, you'll be feeling the exact same way you feel now about £2,000, but it will be 5,000 or 10,000 or even £20,000. I currently feel the same way about £20,000 as I used to feel about £2,000. Mm-hmm. And nothing's changed in the world with currency. You know, like there hasn't been some dramatic change other than in my own mind. And what I believe is that when we go into a meeting and speak to a client about price, what we so often do is we inflict our own personal beliefs about money onto the client. And
okay, yeah,
just as I just said, you know, your thoughts about £2,000 very different to my thoughts about £2,000,
yeah,
and mine is very different to a business owner who's running a multi-million pound business, which again will be very different to someone like Elon Musk. You know, so like it's all entirely subjective. Each project needs to be priced differently, and that's why I believe so strongly in results-based pricing. And the point of the process is to be able to find a solution that's proportional to the problem for each and every project, you know, one at a time. And, you know, having an arbitrary day rate won't ever do justice to the kind of results that you're trying to get. It won't do your business justice. It won't do the client justice, and it probably won't get the results that they're after, because the chances are that an arbitrary day rate of, say, £1,000 a day isn't what the business needs, and it won't get the kind of results that they're after. Impinging your own beliefs and preconceived ideas about money into the conversation with a client is almost always counterproductive. Instead, what I suggest is to practice uncovering the potential value of the project to the client so you can avoid arbitrary day rates and create a solution that's proportional to the problem. Again, Scott found himself in a similar scenario.
So I do work for the army, and it's basically all about recruitment, and it's very, very, very difficult to quantify how many people are converted by the video. And you can definitely quantify how many people share it and like it, and how far it spreads out with their following and such like. And you can break down all these numbers, but financially, how do I quantify that? Do you have any idea how I'd approach it?
So I think what the first thing is, the army is a massive organization, and the chances are you might not be speaking to the person who's going to have that kind of financial oversight, who's going to be able to make decisions on that level. And this is generally why it's a lot easier to work with smaller and medium-sized businesses, because you can get to the real decision maker, the person who signs the checks, and you can have that conversation. So that's why it's one of the earlier stages, one of the earlier steps in the process, is to make sure you're speaking to the decision maker. Because if you overlook that step and you end up speaking to someone in like marketing department, then you end up hitting a brick wall when it comes to that point. Did you watch the debrief video I did recently about the school project?
Yes, and the videos.
Yeah, so
very good.
Thanks. That's kind of maybe a good one to base it on, because that was a client that I worked with in the past, and we've worked with smaller budgets, and I wanted to get them to rethink how they approached it. And I was speaking to the marketing director, marketing manager, and she didn't have the kind of complete financial oversight. She wasn't able to make huge financial decisions. She had a kind of rough budget, and she's also able, I know from past experience, if she needs to get a bit more budget, she can, you know, find it from, I don't know, imaginary places that she kind of, from. She's like,
I like those people.
Take it from here and move it over. So I knew roughly that what she was capable of. But I found that in the conversation, she wasn't able to talk about the specific numbers, you know, the value of each customer or each student. She wasn't able to say how many students she thought would be reasonable to expect. So that was fine though, because I still went through every other step of the process about talking about the value of the video to them and the importance of it. You know, I knew from my own experience that each student was going to be spending £20,000 to £30,000 a year on the school. So I could kind of base it off that and say, you know, look, if this project is a success, then it's going to have a huge impact on the school's bottom line. And that was enough to then use a much higher price anchor at like £40,000, to then work backwards and kind of get a feel for what she thought was realistic and reasonable. But that's the kind of level of understanding that you need to try and get to in the meeting, just from asking more questions. Like, more questions equals more understanding, which equals positioning yourself strongly
as the expert
to be able to get the right solution. Once you know the potential value of the project to the client, you've already positioned yourself as the video strategist. You're not just a visual creator, you're focusing on results. Another great question that Scott raised was, what do I really need to know about the customer's business to be able to propose a truly effective solution?
Am I right in thinking that kind of the root of that question is about kind of what more do you need to offer as a video production company in order to justify charging higher rates?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a really good question. And this is something that comes up a lot. And it's really like the first and foremost, I think regardless of results-based pricing, I think it's important to note that you don't have to do any more in order to charge more, because the chances are, and based on what we've spoken about already, the chances are that you're already undercharging. And the value is in the client's mind, not what you assume they need. It starts at the very beginning. It's that first conversation with the client. Whereas instead of establishing yourself as the videographer who's just going to shoot and edit and deliver the video, which is exactly what you did there, instead you're establishing yourself as the expert, the video strategist, the person who's going to help them get specific results from the video. Then they're going to give you the trust and the responsibility to oversee that the video gets the kind of results that they're after. And it wouldn't be a case of them just uploading the video, in the middle of the night. It would have been a case of, this is your responsibility, and they will either ask for your advice on it or they will let you do it. But in doing that, in taking more risk and more responsibility for the project, you're then able to charge significantly more as well. You're presenting yourself as the expert and you're being hired as a partner. You're working on that level rather than just delivering that video, which in essence is something that they could go to any videographer for, and they can just compete on price and get someone cheaper and cheaper. You try and put up a wall whereby, rather than to begin with, you're talking about all the solutions and the things that you can do for them first. You only do that after you've established the price. So you can switch those two around and focus on the needs of the client and the results that they're after first, and then establish the value of those results so you can agree on a price. Then afterwards, you can talk about the solutions and exactly how you're going to treat it to get the results.
Another thing we discussed that most creatives suffer from is the classic trap of thinking that you need better equipment to charge more.
I'm shooting on a HD camera. Like, I'm still on a Canon 80D. It doesn't have 4K capabilities. It doesn't do 120 frames per second. Nobody has any idea. If I gave them those numbers, they wouldn't have a clue, and they don't care. And it's just going on social media anyway. So now one of the videos is going to be published to 2.7 million people on the main Army media page. And like you said, none of those things had ever come into consideration. Yet it's an anxiety that I turned up on set and everyone's got these massive cameras and they're, oh, look at this. And I'm like feeling so like, and I'm like, oh, here's my little ATD. And then everyone just is like, right, so you're not serious then, and I'm like, I am. Like, wait until you see what I produce and then make that judgment. It's very stressful, but it's like you say, you still have that now. So I mean, I guess that's always going to be there.
I mean, it's almost not even worrying about saying wait to see what I produce. It's more or less wait to see what results this generates for the client.
Wow, okay. That's
because
again,
you've given a lot more consideration to the purpose of the project and the needs of the client than anyone else.
I am unbelievably desperate for a C70, a Canon C70. It's going to put me out $5,000. If I had filmed the recent Army video with a C70, like, the only different thing I think would be I wouldn't have been able to run as fast and catch up with people as often, and I would have taken 4 times longer to edit the footage. Other than that, aesthetically, very little would change. So, I mean, this is the pragmatic side talking, but I really want the camera. So, persuade me. Why should I not buy the C70?
I mean, look at it as a business decision, like any other decision where you've got a return on investment. And you know, what is your goal at the moment with your business? Are you looking to grow it in terms of revenue? Are you wanting to hire an editor or a sales rep, or you know, are you looking to improve your website, or are you looking just to improve the aesthetics of your videos by like 10%? You know?
Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah, exactly. And you can see that the aesthetic of the video is easily the final one in that list, yet the most tempting.
I think it's so easy to rent. I mean, you know,
yeah,
like you could rent almost anything for the project. And if you were focusing first on charging more, then renting becomes such an easy no-brainer. And, you know, equipment is rented for about 2% of the total cost. So, you know, you'd need to rent about 50 times before it would make sense to have bought the camera.
Yeah, I remember going through that maths and thinking, Jesus, I'm not charging enough at all. Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I think, again, I don't need to buy the new Ronin S thing. My older one's perfectly fine, but their marketing has successfully, you know, got into my bones. I want it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, just focus on charging more first, and then rent, which is better for your cash flow, and you can get better equipment that way. You can get the right equipment for each job rather than just having to use the same kit for every job because you own it and you need to charge it out.
Yeah.
And it just kind of gives you a lot more freedom. If you're near a rental house, rental houses do let you just come and play with the equipment and practice with it. And
do they? Oh,
yeah,
cool.
They're almost always happy for you to do that, because it means
I didn't know that.
They often do training days as well.
Finally, and this is a really good point to end on, for those of you who are still figuring out your niche whilst earning a stable income through filmmaking.
You keep on doing what you're doing now with your you know, current like commercial projects, and that's what pays the bills. And then in parallel to that, you're also doing a script writing and developing your storytelling skills at the same time. So if there's a way for what you're doing now to help you get to where you want to be in that sense, or, you know, maybe then you take the first approach, or if what you're doing now is a means to make money so that you can finance your other skills, then you take the second approach.
For most, it's their mindset and insecurities around money combined with a lack of understanding and business knowledge. The reality is, it's these shifts in perspective that are required to be able to grow a successful creative business. Yet, unbelievably, they aren't readily available and they're not taught in film school.
This was your second meeting. So you had the first one, then you sent over the proposal, and then you had a second meeting to discuss the proposal. So yeah, tell me how that went.
Having already completed one project with them very quickly, we decided to have a much more chilled out kind of review of the future. And in that review, we discussed what they think that they need, but also they confess that they don't really know what they need. And it was a really nice opportunity for me to establish myself as the expert, which I would never have had the confidence to do, I don't think, prior to being on the course, which was great. So yeah, that meeting went very well. We discussed what they would like, and I was able to break down some of my own barriers of not wanting to talk about results-based pricing or value-based pricing. But yeah, I managed to do that and managed to secure the job at, I think, 3 times the value that I was expecting, and thousands of pounds worth of work, which has just like blown me away. So, you know, a huge amount of success really from a very short space of time.
Awesome. So what was your approach before? How would you have approached a project like this? And how is this approach different?
Yeah, okay, so all the other projects, everything I've ever done before, it was just that awkward moment where you're like, okay, soon I'm going to have to start talking about price. And I found that the most difficult part every single time. And then as I was having the conversation, I would be thinking about what price I want to go in for, and I'd have a number in my head, and I'd be like, right, I can do it for this. And then I would say whatever number was in my head minus 500 quid, because I'm an idiot. And I just had these mental blocks, and I was like, yeah, I can do that for £1,000, when I'm like, no, I agreed with myself 1,600. But anyway, and that was basically because I wasn't able to persuade, or I felt like they wouldn't understand why anybody would need to charge so much for a video. My mindset since then has just completely transformed. It's very much a lot. It's like, okay, so you want a video not because you want this aesthetic piece, but because you want something that's going to bring you value. And since I'm that person who can bring you that value, this is what is probably worth a lot more than more to you than what I'm selling it as. So explaining that to the customer is, again, the transition that I made just from making that first post on your members page, having some feedback from you and the guys, having that chat with you, and then all of a sudden I was able to see it clearly, really see it clearly. And now I get it, and I think it went well because of that sort of clarity. It's not just a video for the sake of a video. It's a video that has business orientated goals. And I think that's the real distinction, because ultimately, why would anybody want a video that's going to cost thousands of pounds just because they look great? Unless your clients are all narcissists, that's not really going to work out very well for you. So learning and thinking about it solely from a business perspective is something that I'm still working on, because I still want to tell them all the creative ideas that I have. But then I'm understanding that I need to reserve that and think purely about the outcomes that they're after, and then the process comes later.
What were you looking to achieve going into this meeting, and what was the outcome of the meeting?
Going into the meeting, I was hoping to use value-based pricing as the sole way of arriving at the cost of the video. So I wasn't going to throw a number out there. I wasn't going to make anything up. I was going to follow the sequence that you articulate on the Business Video Mastery course and arrive at that number through that method. That was it. I didn't care what the number was. All I wanted to do was get past that hurdle, because it was something that I just could not process. And I just felt like I was going to muck it up, or I was being intrusive. So when I finally, it came to the meeting, and we discussed all the methods and the reasons or the ways that I want to charge, I was really pleased that the words came across very non-aggressively or non-intrusively, and they liked what they heard, and they liked that it was a business angle and not just video for sake of video, and they were completely on board. And I ended up making 3 times more than the maximum number that I would have been delighted with if you told me in advance, like 3 times more.
Should we have a quick look at the email first? I mean, mainly for your benefit, because I think you were curious about what you wrote there. One of the things you said in your email was, I suggest you should expect to invest somewhere between 10 to 30% of that sum to make this campaign a success, which in this case would be 10 to 30,000 pounds over that same 1-year time frame. These numbers require revision later with more precise financial goals to substantiate them, but that range is usually accurate for a year-long campaign. So it was the point, I think, where you said these numbers require revision later with more precise financial goals. And I think that was purely your, in your own mind, you were trying to find a way to justify saying, you know, so £10,000, £30,000. I think you felt like you need to justify it. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And what was the other thing? And I'll write it down so I might be able to tie them in to the same answer.
The other thing was, I think. Again, there's a bit more justification further on where you said, this will allow us to refine the numbers proportional to the success of the project, give you confidence that you are making sensible investments and that I'm charging correctly for my service. And I think all that is there's just like, it's showing a little seed of doubt in your mind, a slight lack of confidence just in, you know, in the numbers that you're putting forward. And again, that you feel like there might be some justification needed. But I mean, you know, with hindsight, I mean, now knowing what you know now, they went for the highest tier option and they didn't bat an eyelid at the £30,000 price anchor that you laid, right? So again, I mean, the most important thing here is that you achieved your goal of, you know, you had a certain price that you wanted to achieve and you way surpassed that. That's the most important thing, because this is all about taking one step at a time. In this case, I think you've taken about 3 steps, which is fantastic. And it's always going to feel strange saying, you know, a figure like £30,000 when you're used to charging, you know, £1,000, £2,000 or £3,000. So you know, I think in all possible respects, you got the best result. Are you planning on doing all of the work yourself, or are you planning on outsourcing elements of it?
I know you say loving editing doesn't make it worth doing, and I respect that. But I love editing. Like, it is my therapy, and if I lose that therapeutic fallback, then I don't know how much I'm going to want to do this.
In the future, as you start landing more work, you may then want to start looking at evaluating the value of your time, and then determining kind of like which things within the business you want to be doing most. And then you can sort of start building those relationships with like trusted freelancers.
Do you think that networking through your group would be a good way of meeting people in the area, like local, who would be of high standard? Like, how would you advise finding somebody?
I think the group's probably a good idea. I've spoken to some really talented people through the group, and it tends to attract people who are a bit more experienced.
Yeah, they're already there visually.
They're already working professionally, and they're looking to take it to the next level. It's not going to cost a lot to get someone on there to help you with the lights and the shooting, proportional to how much it's going to improve the quality of the video. Because, you know, if you've got someone you can trust and they can get on with that, then you can focus on the other areas and everything's going to be a lot better.
Okay, then I think my next step, once I have some time, is to learn more about the different ways that a video can be utilized. Because at the beginning of the year, I had a meeting with a brewery, and I was like, I can really help you. This is what I can deliver. And I saw that they had already got some really good videos done. And I was like, but they got no traction, you know, they 200 views, what a waste. And I thought, I will help you. This was me trying to implement some of the things you taught me, you know, bring value. And then when she was like, so how are you going to do that? I was like, I don't know. Well, I didn't say I don't know. I just said something, and I think she saw that I didn't know. And I want to know the different ways that somebody can utilize them. And I really think that that's my next step now, is learning some different campaigns or different uses for videos.
You know the 80-20 rule? I think
yes.
I think that's more a 20% thing. That's like fine tuning. Whereas what you've been doing up until this point, that's the 80% that matters most. Being able to talk about the specific types of videos and uses for videos will help you optimize the results that you get for your clients. But at the moment, you're able to bring a client on board based on the conversations that you've already been having, which haven't required that extra knowledge. Not only can you now follow the steps that you know work and you've gone through with this client, but you can also say you've also got the result to back it up, to be able to say that with my last client, through delivering a video to them, they completely sold out and they'd never seen anything like it. They were able to get X return on investment by utilizing video. And what I did was I took a business first approach. I helped them understand their needs and their business objectives. And then I created a campaign that got the result that they were after. And there's no conversation there that goes into any extreme detail about, you know, the types of video and this kind of thing, because you want to be positioning yourself as the expert where they trust in your ability to get the result. You've always got to be careful that you don't go down the slippery slope of trying to justify yourself again. So they are very useful things that will help you get better results for your clients in the future. But again, like talking about the creative, you don't want to be at the forefront trying to like justify and sell your services. You want to be focusing on their business and the results.
If you'd like to learn more about the kind of mentoring that you can get to help level up your video business, then check out the 1 hour of free filmmaking training that I'll link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.